What's up, bitches?
Let's talk about crime.
What's up?
Holler.
Holler. Are you not feeling it? What's going on? Holler.
Listen, we just got back from the gym.
Oh man, I can tell you right now, when we were at the gym, we do not Sierra, but the rest of us.
I go a little too crazy at the gym.
We do a 30-minute circuit once a week, and we were doing it. And when I tell you that this old lady was waiting for one of the machines today, she was waiting for the machines not to do the circuit. She was waiting for the machines to just cut in and use a machine. My biggest pet peeve is this area specifically for the circuits.
If you go to Planet Fitness,
you know what we're talking about.
Or you know of that gym, it's that 30-minute area.
Yeah, so we're in there doing it, and I'm doing my triceps. And then behind me is my son, and then behind my son would be my husband. So we're all rotating in, right? She's standing there, and I can see her, and she's standing and waiting. And I know she is there to just use the tricep machine, and so I sit so that she can't get on the machine. And then my son comes over, he does it. And in the middle, she walks away. She comes back. And in the middle of it, I turn around because I'm doing the stair stepper thing. And I turn and I'm like, don't move. I literally told him, don't move. So then my husband goes over and she tries to cut in front of him. And she goes, oh, are you next? And he goes, yeah, it's part of the circuit. And she got mad and walked away. But I'm when we go and do the 30-minute circuit, there's always people that are just sitting on the machines, and it pisses me off because it's you're not doing the 30-minute circuit. Go use the machines outside the 30-minute circuit area. And it's a workout.
You don't talk about a fucking workout. It's a goddamn Stairmaster.
Nobody likes, I don't know.
That shit kicks my ass every single time.
Listen, we're not talking about stairs because I think that's a death wish.
And then we have stairs in our fucking house.
I think the stairs are
and to our front door.
Yep.
I can't get away from them.
So you shouldn't be doing them at the gym if you can get it on.
That's the only one that makes me feel like I'm actually getting a fucking workout in.
Well, go do the 30-minute circuit. I guarantee you you're going to fucking sweat your ass off.
Listen, I don't want to move that much.
I'm just saying it's
just
really
throwing that out there.
It's worth it. Anyways.
All right.
We are on episode 3. And do you want to just
who's the bitch?
We are talking about Graham Dwyer.
Bum, bum, bum.
This was in August of 2012. He murdered a woman named Elaine O'Hara. And this does take place in Ireland. And her body is found in the mountains of Dublin. Side note, I want to go to Ireland. So this did not make me want to go to Ireland, but I would like to. So this is kind of cool. Anyways, let's jump into it. So let's talk first about Elaine. So Elaine O'Hara was born March 17th, 1976 in Dublin, Ireland. She attended St. Joseph of Cluny Secondary School. Now, she was bullied in school and people were really rude to her, so don't fucking do that because it's not nice. She also had some mental health issues, and she was actually regularly hospitalized in psychiatric care. So her entire life, from the time she was young, she was what people would deem as weird or different. And so she was bullied for it. She sought mental health treatment a lot over her lifetime. She was actually diagnosed with depression and borderline personality disorder. She also had asthma, diabetes, and dyslexia. That's just a rough life. Honestly, my son is dyslexic, and dyslexia in itself when you're growing up, it's a little hard to deal with because it's everybody thinks you're stupid because you can't read, but you're not stupid. You're actually super smart. You just struggle with phonetically sounding things out. Anyways, so in 2002, her mother passes away and she is completely devastated. And then again in 2007, she is totally thrown off because her psychologist that she had been working with for the last 10 years, 15 years, suddenly passes away. So these two people that were extremely important in her life, she doesn't know how to handle it, to be honest with you. In 2005, actually, so 3 years after her mom had passed away, she actually moves out of her family home. So she had been living in her family home all the way up until 2005. And again, she was born in 1976. So that puts her in her 30s. I don't know the exact number because I can't do math. She might even be 40.
Do you want me to do the math?
I do want you to do the math. Bring out the calculator because I would like to know how old she was.
What was it? 2005 minus what?
1976.
29.
Jeez, criminy. See, I'm terrible at math. Okay, so she's 29 years old. She had been living in her family home this whole time. She moves out of her family home, which was actually located in Killiney, and she moved to a flat of her own in Black Rock. Now, O'Hara did work as a childcare assistant in Ballyrack, and I apologize because I know that that's not how you pronounce these things, but I am not from Ireland. So I'm just saying them the way that us Americans would say it. And she worked part-time in a news agency in Black Rock. She also took night classes because she wanted to learn how to become a Montessori teacher, which for those of you who don't know, Montessori is typically like a preschool, like younger, but it's a very structured preschool. So she wanted to basically become a teacher to young kids. That's about it. To be honest, that's all you really need to know much about her. She's just a girl who had some struggles, but she was dealing with them. She's living her life. She's working, living on her own, doing the damn thing. So then we talk about Graham Dwyer. He is born September 13th, 1972 in Bandon to Sean and Susan Dwyer. He is a middle child. He has an older sister and 2 younger brothers. Now, he attended school and he was actually a relatively good student. He had really strong work ethic and he worked really hard. He attended Hamilton High School in Bandon as well. And he was very interested in music, like so much so as that he like studied music. He also played the bass guitar and he had a super good social life. Like no like abusive things, nothing like that. Literally just living his life.
It's because he was the middle child.
Fair. I mean, I'm a middle child and I'm not to.
The psychotic one.
I might be the only one super interested in murderers, serial killers, and true crime. But I'm also the one that got left at the library when I was in 6th grade and had to bum a ride home from some strange ass lady that I didn't know. And when I walked in the door, my mom goes, "Where have you been?" That she dropped me off at the library. Okay. So us middle children are forgotten about and we are upstanding and fucking super responsible because we have to take care of ourselves.
I mean, I'm the oldest, so
yeah,
I don't have those problems.
You came out the womb as a fucking old ass lady.
That's
so
pretty accurate.
So it's fine. Anyways, yeah, so he has a really good social life and he actually regularly attends concerts and seriously, just so like normal social. Now in 1991, he attends a music festival in Tipperary and there he meets Emer McShay. Now she becomes his girlfriend for many years. They continue their relationship through college. And they actually continued until they were in their mid-20s. Now, in October of 1992, Emer gives birth to their son, Shannon. Now, Graham has, at this point, confided in Emer about a fetish that he has. He tells her, like, you know, because they've been in a relationship, they've been together for a long time. So Graham basically looks at her and says, "Hey, yeah, so I would like to stab a woman while I'm having sex with her." And she's kind of like, not me, but okay, cool, whatever. Like, that's a little weird. So his solution to this is that he brings a knife to bed with him and he pretends to stab her while having sex with her multiple different times. Although he never actually stabbed her, he would pretend like he was going to stab her to see if that would kind of feed his fetish. Why are you?
Nah. I don't know.
Now, this is enough to scare
I don't judge weird shit that you want to do in that time frame, but no.
Okay, so this scares the shit out of her. So she ends up actually
fucking rightfully so.
ending her relationship with him, and she takes their son and she moves to Donegal. Now, around the same time that his son was born, so in 1992, he decides to enroll in the Dublin Institute of Technology, and he wants to start studying architecture. And he ends up qualifying for a degree. Because I'm not from Ireland, I don't like in the United States, we have like the associate's degree. We have a bachelor's degree, master's degree, doctorates. Well, they don't have them like that, I guess, because he qualified for a 2.1 degree. I have no idea what that is. I'm just can tell you that he qualified for that and got it in 1997. So it took him 5 years to get it. So I'm guessing it's probably pretty equivalent to like either a bachelor's or master's degree. But it put him in a point where he actually could become an architect. This solidified him getting jobs in architecture world. So it was obviously a high enough degree. So then he ends up meeting a woman named Gemma while he's studying at the Dublin Institute of Technology, because they are both in school, and they are both in school to be architects. They do eventually move in together and they end up getting married. Now, his classmates described him as a fairly charming and popular person, and he was fun to hang out with, and he would go out and listen to music and drink and hang, and he was like a good guy. He was a few years older than most of the other students, but that did not bother them. They all knew that he had had a child because he was very upfront about the fact that he had a child, and he would spend a lot of his time, though, flirting and chasing at other women, like chasing around women. And yes, he did this while he was with Gemma, and actually he still did it after they were married. So he would go out and, do the thing because she wouldn't be there. So then in 1998, so now he's graduated, he's got his degree, he becomes an associate member of the Royal Institute of Architects of Ireland, which is like from my understanding, it's not a business, but it's almost like a kind of like a union that's here in the United States. Like it's a group that like a group of architects that you have to actually like apply to become a member of and all this stuff. So he becomes a member of that. And he also works in multiple architectural practices. He works for Keane Murphy Duff. He works for Opperman Associates. And he also works for Burke Kennedy Doyle. His experience being in these architectural practices is very different than in school. He's not very well liked by his colleagues. And at one point, he was actually fired from an architectural institute or an architectural practice because he had gotten into an argument with one of his colleagues while they were out drinking. And the following Monday, when the colleague came in, his station and his computer were completely trashed. And the company ends up doing an investigation and find out that he was obviously... Dwyer was the one who did this, and it stemmed from an argument over the weekend. And then they started seeing that he was having like more erratic behavior. He was having more outbursts. And they basically were like, listen, you can't be with this company. You're not a very good coworker. You are an asshole. So you're fired. And then after he leaves, they actually are so worried about his like outbursts that they actually changed the locks on the building so he couldn't get back in. Like he obviously was being some kind of assholey. And then at another firm, he had actually hacked into their internal computer system to see how much everyone was getting paid. And he lost his ever-loving shit when he found out that some people there were making more than he was. So again, not really the nicest of guys. Some of his colleagues described him as a womanizer. Particularly, he would focus on women who were not confident in themselves, and they would like witness him when they go out to like colleagues, like go drinking or whatever. He would focus on the girls who were overweight, maybe not really that pretty. He might go up to a group of girls, and the girls that are quiet and not talking, he'd focus his attention on them. Or if it was like a group and there was like 3 girls and 2 of them had like getting all the attention and there's one girl that's not, that's who he'd focus on. So he was preying on girls who didn't have a lot of confidence. He was also a showboater. He had like fancy cars and a fancy watch, and he had fancy clothes and, tried to buy fancy houses. Big time, like trying to show that he had a shit ton of money. He was someone who drank way too much while socializing. That was the other thing that his colleagues would say, is that he would get piss drunk. He'd get piss drunk when they'd be out, which is typically not what you want to do when you're out with your colleagues. Now, he also did like to cycle and mountain bike, and he was very skilled at computers and 3D visualization, and he really loved to fly model airplanes. So overall, other than his outbursts and his weird womanizing and his weird, like, I want to drink too much, he was relatively like a normal guy. He was upset people made more money than him, but he had a degree, and he was good at it. Like him and Gemma together actually worked together on some projects. And Gemma came from like a really wealthy family. So like, again, nothing too crazy, nothing out of the ordinary. 2007. So now we're all the way into 2007. This is when Graham meets Elaine O'Hara. Now they meet on a fetish website that was alt.com. And Elaine O'Hara was on that website under the name Help Me Learn 36/F. Help Me Learn 36 Female. Okay, that's what her username was. Dwyer's username was Architect72. Okay, and they begin to have a BDSM relationship. Now, again, if you don't know what BDSM, it is bondage and sadomasochist relationship. So it has to do with a lot of the times slaves and masters. It has to do with bondage. It has to do with a lot of times there's contracts where you sign to say what you are and are not willing to do. There's no judgment here. To be honest with you, I have zero issues with people who partake in BDSM if it's done correctly. I don't care. What goes on in your house does not affect me. However, the BDSM thing has a lot to do with this case, so that's why I'm bringing it up. So they are in this BDSM relationship, and they spend the next 5 years texting and meeting up. And during these meetups, they would meet up and have sexual relationships, and it would involve bondage, it would involve violence, and it would involve knives. And then in 2008, they had a very intense relationship by this time. So they have been like talking to each other now for like almost a year at this point. Their relationship has gotten very intense. They're constantly texting. He is master, Elaine is slave, and they would text. And it had gotten so intense that they actually made violent homemade sexual videos too. So they would meet up, make these videos, and there was a lot of violence involved. After a little while, their relationship kind of disappears and kind of fades out. I have no idea why. Nobody knows why. Only the two of them know why. But in March of 2011, they rekindle their relationship at the insistence of Dwyer. So he basically contacts Elaine and he's like, hey, I miss you. I want to see you again. Yada, yada, yada. There are multiple text messages that are sent back and forth between the two of them. And he always referred to her as slave and she always referred to him as master. In June of 2011, I'm just going to give a warning here. Some of his messages are fucking brutal, so take that for what it is. So in June 2011, he actually had texted, I want to stick my knife in the flesh while I'm sexually aroused. I would like to stab a girl to death at some time. And then he texts her again and he says, my urge to rape, stab, or kill is huge. You have to help me control or satisfy it. So so again, bondage relationships are one thing. This is going like really, really far into the violent side of things. So he is not only telling her like, oh, I want to tie you up and beat you, whatever. I don't know. I don't know how the bondage stuff works, but he's actually telling her like, I want to kill somebody. I want to rape somebody. I want to stab somebody. And he's asking her, please, will you help me so that I don't actually do this? Can you help me with this? So she agrees because also, by the way, Elaine was very much so into BDSM. So when they met on alt.com, it was because both of them are into BDSM, which again, no judgment. That's okay. You found somebody who likes what you like. Okay, cool. She didn't realize what kind of a person she was getting into a relationship with though. She agrees. And Dwyer actually used a lot of violence and harm on Elaine, and he claimed that it was all part of their sexual activities, but it was so far above and beyond that it's kind of like, but was it? Another example of their text was that Elaine had texted and she had said, master, I would like to have a child. So she was part of the reason she was going along with all this stuff is because in the beginning, when they first started talking about things that he wanted versus her, one of the things she wants was to have a child. And he kept telling her, well, if you help me with these things, I will get you pregnant. So she says to him, master, I want to have a child. And he says, okay, I'm down. Like I'll get you pregnant, but you have to help me murder somebody. So that was his exchange. In exchange for a child, help me kill somebody. During this time, there were a lot of times that they would text and meet up and they would continue to do it over and over. Violent, homemade sexual videos. Sometimes they weren't videos. Sometimes there was just violence, and they continued to meet. And no, she did not ever have a baby, and no, she did not ever get pregnant. So then on August 22nd of 2012, So again, they've been back in contact for over a year. Elaine goes missing. Now, at first, it is assumed that she has disappeared while volunteering for the 2012 Tall Ships races. However, they go to her house and they find her purse, a bag, and her phone in her house. And so then they have security footage like all over like where she lives, and they look at some security footage and it shows her leaving her home, but she has a different phone in her hand. So her phone is at home, her purse is at home. This bag that she brings with her to go to places is all at home. But there is a video footage of her leaving and she has a phone in her hand. So now they realize she has two phones. They're kind of looking around. They're putting out some like missing person stuff to try to figure out where she is. And this person comes forward and says, yeah, I think the lady that is missing, I saw her not too long ago. She was in Shanahan Park. They were like, okay, well, that makes sense because her mom was buried in the Shanahan cemetery. And so they just were like, oh yeah, she was probably on her way to go see her mom. So, okay, cool. Well, later they end up finding her car by the cemetery, and it is determined that due to her psychological history that they actually think that she had went into this park area to commit suicide. Side note, she had just recently been released out of a psychiatric unit for attempting suicide. So that was their conclusion, is because she had literally that day, so August 22nd, she had just been released from a psychiatric facility that she had been in for attempting to commit suicide. Her family was like, she probably committed suicide. Like she probably left there, even though the psychiatric facility was like, no, she seemed like she was good. And mind you, some of the people in the psychiatric facility knew her very well because of how many times she'd gone in there. So they were all very confident that she left on like a good note, like she was okay. So she had been in the psychiatric unit, and while she was there, she was actually texting back and forth with Dwyer. And he had told her that he was going to punish her for attempting suicide without him present. Now, there are multiple texting conversations going on, to which at one point she actually tells him that she's scared. And he continues to push her to do as he says, and he promises that he will impregnate her if she does it. Now, she, in the text I read, it was like a couple of days. It was like 3 days worth of text messages between her and him. And it was like, she was telling him that like, I'm afraid. And he was like, well, you have to be punished because how dare you try to kill yourself without me present, because I should have been there to watch, because because this is how he is. And she apologizes and she's like, I know I have to be punished. And he goes, well, you have a couple of choices. So he gave her some choices. None of them were fucking nice, by the way. Like none of them. So she ends up agreeing to allow him to stab her. That was what she agreed to. It's really sad to read because she's like, well, master, are we going to meet up at my apartment to do this? And he was like, no, we're going to be outside in the woods. And she was like, please, master, I do not want to be in the woods. I'm afraid of the woods. I'm afraid of the dark. And he's like, well, that's where we're going to do it. So he ends up talking to her, talks her into agreeing to being stabbed in the woods. And she goes, I'm afraid you're going to kill me because I'm going to be in the woods by myself and you're going to have the ability to kill me. And he was like, I'm not going to kill you. It's a punishment. He had specific demands on how she were to prepare herself to see him. So like he told her to come with no clothing on. So I think actually the jogger said that they saw her and she was wearing like a blue coat. Like that was it. So he told her to come with no clothes on, no bra, no underwear, no nothing. And he told her she needed to shave her body. And he said, you're going to meet me in the woods. I'm going to stab you. And that's your punishment. She's just like, I'm really scared. But she did it anyways. She agrees. Now, by the way, before she gets out there, one of the people that she'd been working with for a long time had come in and noticed that she was kind of like, not like she was just acting weird. And she was kind of like, what's going on? So she kind of told her the truth, and she's like, there's this guy and like, he won't leave me alone. I've been texting him a lot and he is so she told everybody she was in a relationship. She actually told people that she was in a BDSM relationship. It was not a secret. She said she was in a relationship with him, all this stuff. Her friend, or the person that she was telling this to, literally said to her, you probably should call the cops because he's not leaving you alone. You've asked him to leave you alone. Because she at one point asked, can I have some space because you're freaking me out? That's what she told him. And he was like, well, no, I'm not trying to freak you out. Like, this is what I want. This is your punishment. You need to do this for me. By the way, if you do it, I will impregnate you and you will finally have a baby. And she knew that he was never going to impregnate her. And by this time she was just kind of like, she already knew like at this point that He's not the kind of guy she wanted to be with, but he manipulates her. So she agrees to meet him as soon as she gets out. And she actually gets released earlier in the day than she expected. And so she texted him and said, I got out earlier. I'm heading to my apartment. I'm going to get ready. So he gives her specific instructions. She shows up in the woods and he stabs her to death. So on September 10th of 2013, a man named William Fagan, his brother, and another man, they were like out in this area, in this park area. And the water is typically like really high normally. Let me just reiterate that this happened on August 22nd of 2012. Okay, so she meets him in the woods. He kills her. This is a year later, September 10th of 2013. Okay, it's been really hot in Dublin, in Ireland, and there's like this river. Well, the river is normally like 15 inches high and like all this stuff, but because of how hot it had been, the river was only like 12 inches high. So this guy, his brother, and another man, they see this bag that's just kind of like lying in the water. So they go and grab it, and inside the bag they find handcuffs, clothing, a ball gag, restraints, and leg restraints. Hand and leg restraints. So the next day they obviously go turn these items over to the Garda, which is the police in Ireland. And the Garda go back to the area and start searching because they're like, what in the shit? This was obviously in the water and the water had receded, so they found it. So on September 16th, so 6 days later, they find more handcuffs. They find keys, a leather mask, a knife, an inhaler, a chain with a ring on it, and a loyalty card that was on a key ring that belonged to Elaine O'Hara. Now later, they also find 2 Nokia cell phones, 2 mobile battery phones, a pair of glasses, a pair of sunglasses, and a rucksack. So on September 13th of 2013, so 3 days after that first bag was discovered, there's a woman who's walking her dog. Or she's like a dog trainer and she's walking the dog. And this dog, runs off, disappears because they're like on a pathway, and it comes running back and it has bones, like a bone in its mouth, and some clothing was attached to the bone. Now, this dog had gone to this area before over the last like week and had come out with bones before, but she just thought they were like animal bones. So she was just like, whatever, cool. So when she sees the clothing though, she's like, something's kind of weird. So she actually finds out who the owner of the land is. His name is Frank Doyle. She contacts Frank and she's like, I think we need to look on your property because my dog just came running over and it had bones in its mouth and it had some clothing. So like, is there a dead body on your property? So Frank, the woman, and a few other men go back to the land and they kind of walk through and they find this big like opening. And in the opening, they find scattered and gnawed bones, a rib cage, a piece of jawbone, and they actually only recovered 65% of Elaine O'Hara's body. But it was her body because it was identified through dental records. So she had been there, but again, she had been there for over a year. So between animals and just the elements, this is why that's all that was left. So once they identify that Elaine is the person these bones belong to, they begin to search for like all of her items. They go to her house and they start just like going through her whole like apartment. Actually, not through her apartment. They go through her items because again, by this time it's a year later.
I was like, there's no way she has her apartment.
It's not her apartment.
Still.
They go through her stuff. So like, I'm assuming this stuff is with like her parents or something. So they start going through her stuff. Well, one thing they go through for sure is her laptop and her phone, which they had found the day that she was missing. After searching through her laptop and her phone, they find enough evidence to inquire for a search warrant for Mr. Dwyer's house. So they go to his house. Again, he's married. He has 2 children with his wife, by the way, too, now at this point. So he has the son with the one lady, and then he has the 2 kids. He's living this lush fucking life. He's got a really nice house. He lives in a really nice neighborhood with his fancy everything. And they go there and they're like, hey, do you know someone named Elaine O'Hara? And he's like, no. They're like, are you sure? And he's like, I've never even heard of her. So they're like, well, that's funny because we found on her phone and her laptop some interesting information. They had found that she was part of the alt.com and they had found Architect 72 or whatever his name was. And they had found that was linked to his email. So that is how they linked him. Like they could tell, like, obviously you fucking did this, right?
Right.
So finally he's like, okay, whatever. I don't know what you're talking about. So they end up arresting him for murder of Elaine O'Hara. And at his trial, they have evidence that is presented. And in this evidence, it shows violent homemade sexual videos. They showed fragments of emails that provide the evidence of sexual bondage, violence, and knives. They also show multiple messages from O'Hara to Dwyer with repeated threats to stab her. And in the video, this blew my mind, but I guess in the video, a couple of the videos that they showed was actually of Elaine O'Hara being tied up and him stabbing her. Not like the day that she died, but other times. So he had stabbed her.
So she's been stabbed before.
She had been stabbed before by him. So this was part of like what he was doing.
Which makes more sense though as to why, like, yeah, she said she was scared and, you know, because of the woods and things like that. But it makes more sense as to why she was probably okay with it because
she didn't die.
Happened before. Yeah. And she didn't die.
Right. So
that was like, he was saying, I'm not justifying what he did.
No. But he was,
because he was saying, well, that was part of our thing.
Yes.
That makes a lot more sense. And it makes more sense why she was more willing to go along with it.
Yes. Dwyer's defense tries to argue that there is nothing that they have that ties him to actually murdering her. They said that the text messages were just sexual fantasies. What about the violent videos? I don't know how they could justify. Also, I don't know how a fucking defense attorney can sit there. I know that's their job, but how do you sit there and defend somebody like that? I don't even understand, but I know whatever, that's how it works. The prosecuting attorneys actually say, well, Graham Dwyer preyed on Elaine O'Hara because she had low self-esteem. She had some mental health issues. She wanted to look for a BDSM relationship and he jumped on the opportunity, and that she was not a willing participant in the violent sexual fantasies that he had, and that the one that took her life, she was not willing. And you could just tell by her text messages, she was just like reluctantly going. She also had repeatedly asked him not to stab her in the text messages. Like she literally kept saying like, please don't stab me. Give me a different punishment. I think one of the text messages, if I'm not mistaken, it was something like she had said, well, how come we can't just have a normal BDSM relationship? But she didn't say BDSM. She said SM relationship, like S&M. And she said, how come we can't have a normal S&M relationship? Like, how about you just like, don't feed me or feed me breadcrumbs for a week as a punishment? That was what she had asked him for, because that is what she was looking for, was something more like that. She also had texted him repeatedly and asked him not to beat her anymore. And in the videos, she had screamed, stop, no, don't stab me, stop, no, stop hitting me, whatever. And throughout the text messages, she also stressed that she really wanted companionship and a child. And she kept saying like, I want us to have a relationship, but not like this. I want us to have like a normal S&M relationship. I want a child and I need companionship. I don't need you to be around me all the time, but I need something like that. So on March 27th, 2015, Graham Dwyer is convicted unanimously and he is sentenced to life in prison. And the judge actually said that he agreed 110% with the jury's conviction. Since the trial, Graham Dwyer's attorneys have tried to appeal the conviction. Now, this is what's really fucking crazy. So they tried to appeal his conviction. And this was what they were stating was that they had used phone data. The phone data they had used was invalid and inadmissible in court because they had used the phone data, whatever, from where his locations were. And they were able to show that he was like in the area where she was murdered and all this stuff, right? And so they were saying that like, that was illegal. You are not allowed to do that. And in 2021, so this, they're appealing. In 2021, an advisor that was part of this whole appeal had actually stated that the data is permitted only in the event of a threat to national security and not for investigation of crimes. So basically said, you're right. You actually have some legal standing here because they are not allowed to use your phone against you unless you're threatening to like kill a mass amount of people, or it's only for national security that we should be allowed to go to a phone company and say, give me the records of where they were located, give me their text messages, we want to see all this. Not for a murder case, only if it was a threat to our nation, to the nation. Moving forward with that, he didn't get out of jail for that, but what he was trying to get is He needed them to say that for his lawyers to go to the Irish Court of Appeals and say, hey, look, the European whoever agree that this was not okay. Okay. So he gets that approval. So then in 2023, they're in this appeal process and they're like, so just so you know, according to the European, I wish I would have written it down. I don't remember. It's a group. According to them, what you guys did for the data was illegal. And the data and his locations and those text messages are what literally nailed him. Those are what put him in jail. So because those are not admissible in court, technically he should be let out of jail. And if you want to retry him, you can, but you have to do it without the text messages. So they bring it to the Supreme Court in Ireland and it's dismissed. They dismiss it. So so that happens. They go back and do more appeals all the way up until July of this year, 2024. Okay. So he is really, he's trying. So in July of 2024, they bring it to the highest court that they can go to, right? Ireland's court is what it's called. So they brought this all the way up and said, we're sitting here telling you that what they did was wrong. They used his phone locations illegally. They took his text messages illegally, and that is what made him guilty. Therefore, he deserves a new trial, and he should be let out until that trial's over. And the Supreme Court ruled that the mobile data was admissible. And since this was the rule by the Ireland's Court of Final Appeal, this means that this decision exhausted any and all of Dwyer's appeal options for the future. So meaning that he was told, you're fucking lying. Your shit stinks like worse than everybody else's. And no, bitch, you belong in jail. And by the way, you can never appeal this again. That's literally what they did. So they went against what the recommendation was. And they said, nope, you're staying in jail. Bravo, Ireland. Bravo.
Bro, the U.S. needs to take some pointers from
right,
Ireland,
like
man.
for real. Some of the serial killers we do in the U.S., I'm like, how many chances did these motherfuckers
or
get?
When they do get out, and you're just like, what the fuck? Like, really?
No,
really?
I'm not kidding you. If you haven't listened to Fatal Blend yet, this is kind of a spoiler alert, but one of the episodes we just did on Fatal Blend, the guy literally was a thief from the age of 8 years old through his entire life and never served prison until he was like 27 and then ends up killing people. And it's like, well, if you would have done your goddamn job, maybe he wouldn't have. Anyways, so Graham Dwyer is currently still serving his life sentence. He is actually in the G2 wing in the Midlands prison in Portlaoise, and he will continue to serve until his death because he has no option to get out because he has no more appeals and there's nothing he can do. And that shit just came hot off the presses in July. Like literally July is when he got told. Isn't that crazy? Like the fact that this is from the 90s. And that just tells you how long appeal processes can go. But the fact that he was just now told like, oh, no, you're never going to get out. And
SOL, my guy.
Yeah, you and your shitty data deserve to be where you are. I didn't really look far into it, but because I don't like putting like the family members on blast, I didn't want to do any deep dive into his wife or anything like that. But I did find that they are not together. Like, as a matter of fact, she is actually one of like 5 women that put him in prison. And I say that because we are 2 girls. We are 2 women. And I will just point this out. One of the articles I read, it linked. So his wife, she actually was on she testified against him. Actually, she testified. They found like a shovel or something. And she was like, oh yeah, that looks just like the one that belongs in our garden. So she was not having it. There is a girl from the United States that was somebody he had met on a BDSM website that came forward and said all the shit that he said to her.
Well, and I'm sure the first baby mama with
how
he told her her fetish, his fetish.
Yes, she came forward and talked about that. And then the prosecuting attorney was a female. The investigator was a female, and I believe just that. So those 5 women single-handedly made this case strong enough to put his ass in prison. Bravo, ladies.
It does make me wonder though, like. And you'll never know the answer. Obviously, technically you could go fucking ask him because he's still alive. But I do kind of sit here and wonder, like, because he had stabbed her before, right? Like,
Yes.
that's part of the evidence that they brought up.
Right.
It does make me wonder, though, not that it's okay, but was this an accidental killing?
No. There is an article where they talk about how he supposedly now has talked about how he was struggling with all kinds of like sexual fantasies, and nothing he was doing at this point was helping. And when he was texting her, asking her to meet him in the woods, he did it because he wanted to kill her, because that is what he had been fantasizing about. And he knew that she'd be the perfect person because she had just come out of a psychiatric facility, and he knew she was in there.
Well, and that was their relationship, and she had let him stab him or stab her in the past.
Yes, he felt that she would be willing to do it. And the reason he did it in the woods was because he knew that exactly what happened. She disappeared and they assumed she killed herself until her body was found. They actually had just moved. Ow, shit, that hurt. They had just moved on with their life, assuming that she had killed herself. And that's exactly what he planned. And that's why he planned it with her, was for that. I will say, had he not gotten caught, I wonder if I'd be talking about him on Fatal Blend, because I feel there's a chance he would have become a serial killer. Because after that, he did it. And if he liked it, now he'll just go to BDSM websites, find people and do the same thing, find different ways. Can you do me a favor and bring out your calculator? I want to know how old he is today, because in my brain, I can't think. So 1976.
He's 48.
So he's 48 years old. That's still relatively young, like honestly. And he is spending the rest of his life in prison. And he should. He should. I don't care about the BDSM thing. I don't. And even if stabbing is something that you do in BDSM, because again, I'm not sure. I mean, sadomasochism, I guess you could see it. In my mind, I would think that stabbing somebody any sort of way is probably a red flag. Like I'm not trying to be offensive, but if your partner and you are in BDSM and they want to stab you to be able to get sexual gratification, that's probably a red flag, because I actually don't think like a typical BDSM relationship is like that. So, but again, if you notice, he didn't do it with somebody that was, I'm not going to say normal, because that's not what I mean.
Well, he didn't do it with somebody that he actually had an attachment with, because the one baby mama, the first one, he had you had said, oh, well, he would pretend to do it, but like he didn't do that to his wife. So
that's the other thing, is his wife. I had no idea about any of this. Like I don't think he ever even brought up any of this kind of stuff. I don't think he brought up any bondage or violence or anything. Well, because
if he was doing that somewhere else, there's
no
reason why he would have to
He was getting
his
gratification somewhere else. But can you imagine like that? My heart like hurts for her, because I'm just sitting there going, she has 2 kids, living the life, right? Her and her husband are both architects. They have this fabulous life. And then all of a sudden he's arrested, and you're told that he has like this whole other life, that he killed a woman, and that he's been doing this for at least 5 years with somebody else. And then you see these videos that he's made where he's violently abusing, beating, stabbing his victims. Like, you must be fucking insane. And he, by the way, if you are listening to this, his picture is what you're going to see on if you're on your phone or whatever. But he's a relatively like normal, he's not scary looking. He just looks like some normal dude. He also came from like a super normal background, married into a super rich family. Like, I'm just really not sure what went wrong here.
Yeah, but you also don't know necessarily what types of things in like middle school or high school, when you're kind of thinking about, sexual fantasy type things. Who knows what he was looking at? He might have come from a normal family, but on his own time.
No, it's true.
Who the fuck knows?
And again, BDSM is not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
So it's okay if that's what you're into. If that's what, I mean, it's the same thing as, in my mind, BDSM is the same thing as any other fetishes. There's foot fetishes, there's furry fetishes. So there's all these different things that people do. And if that's what you're doing, that's fine. It's always okay unless you're doing this. It's not okay when you start actually hurting people, actually harming them and killing people. But I always feel bad because anytime I do something that has to do with any sort of bondage or sadomasochism relationship type things, I always feel like it gives a bad name to people who are into BDSM. And I don't mean to be like that, but it just sucks because you have that one bad apple that uses BDSM as his way to find somebody and then goes like so far above and beyond than what it should have been. So anyways, that's the story of Graham Dwyer, the Ireland BDSM murderer. I don't know what. And she's just sitting there shaking her head. I guess there's no response.
I don't know. I agree. No judgment for BDSM and shit like that. But how the fuck? I don't know. I've never understood like why you would want pain associated.
So
with
that
stuff
was
like
one of the things they did talk about actually was due to,
or that there's no valid, like really, there's no valid fucking reason.
Okay, but in defense of Elaine O'Hara, she had a bunch of mental health issues. And sometimes when people are suffering from mental health issues, they will self-inflict, right? They will self-inflict, they will self-inflict pain for themselves. And so what the thought process is that she became interested in BDSM because it was one of her ways of coping with her mental health issues.
Well, and maybe like I know there's text message proof that is like, can you not stab me?
Yeah, no, she didn't want that.
But and this is the part that's like, I understand she had mental health issues. I'm not justifying what this guy did. But then I also sit here and go, then why'd you keep fucking going back to him? Like you could have gone back onto that website and found somebody else.
Because it's abusive. So
it's a form of abuse.
It's a form of abuse and
turning into physical.
Well, and he promised her a child. So, in her mind, this is just how BDSM worked for her. And I'm sure in the beginning it was fine. I'm sure in the beginning she was okay. And so it's an abusive pattern. And one of the things that people say a lot, and it's true, is that abusive people love their abusers harder than anybody else because they just want that person to love them enough not to hurt them. So I feel like that's kind of where she was at. She really liked this guy. They've been together off and on basically for 5 years, promising, that he would give her a child. And they had this relationship that they had formed that they both willingly went into.
Well, and for her, she had even said, I'm in a relationship.
Absolutely. She told people that she was. So I think it's a complete 100%. It was abusive. And I think she kept going back because she was just thinking that if she just did it better, then he would be, it would be okay. And I don't, she said she was afraid that he would kill her, but he kept promising her he wasn't going to. And so there's also a trust factor where she's like, okay, well, he's never killed me. He's never even tried to kill me. Yeah, he might have stabbed me sometimes, but I heal from those. In her mind, I'm sure that is how it is. But yeah, it definitely is. I believe I even saw one part where they talked about how she had scars on her stomach from where he had like cut her and stabbed her. So it's like she heals from them, not mentally. Nobody's going to mentally heal very well from that, but physically she does. And in her mind, this is what their relationship was. And so it's really sad because she lost her life because she trusted somebody who pretended to be into BDSM, but really he just wanted to murder somebody at some point. And he'd wanted to murder somebody since the early 90s, 70s, 60s, or since the early 80s and 90s. So it was just a matter of time for him. And that's why I say, thank God they caught him, because if they wouldn't have, I think he would have turned into a serial killer that was meeting women to murder them.
Yeah.
For his own sexual gratification. Good times. So, you know what? It's fine. Graham, you're in jail for the rest of your life. You're not allowed to appeal. I hope you suffer. I really do. I hope you suffer every day. Okay, well, all right. So don't forget to follow us at Crime Bitches Podcast. That's on Instagram. You can also find us on X, Crime Bitches Podcast, or you know how you like do the @ symbol. It's @ Crime Bitches. So you can do that. And for now, if you want to contact us and you don't have either of those, you can email us at podcast@gmail.com. I'm working on a TikTok. I don't have it up quite yet, but I will have that pretty soon. And that's all we got, I think, for now. Thank you for joining us for episode 3. And we'll catch you on the flip side.
Bye.